Welcome to the Provost Show. I am Chasity Evans, your host. Our program will examine the core values of the university's newly instituted strategic plan. The core values are the foundation upon which the strategic plan is structured. Joining Provost Joseph H. Silver in this discussion are student guests, Ms. Dejanique Garrison, Ms. Clark Atlanta University, Ms. Michelle Russell, Ms. CAUTV, and Mr. Richard Robinson, Mr. CAUTV. Thank you all for joining me and Dr. Silver, and we welcome you all to the Provost Show.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Good. Glad to have each of you here with us.
Well, Dr. Silver, I have a question for you. And the question I'm about to ask you is related to the strategic plan, the Performance Objective 1. How is the student recruitment process developing as a component of the enrollment management plan?
In actuality, the first core value that we have really relates back to the first priority of the plan. Student centeredness is the first core value, which I know we're going to talk about a little later on. But the student recruitment plan is central to what we are going to do. We call it the enrollment management that looks at both the recruitment side of the house and retention. But we're looking at it in such a way that we're trying to shape the enrollment at Clark Atlanta University. When I say shape the enrollment, meaning making sure that the students who come here can thrive in this environment, not only from an academic standpoint, but also from a financial standpoint. Also in terms of what they bring to the table by way of an international perspective, making sure that they have a vision themselves about how all this shakes out. We're also looking at trying to increase diversity here at Clark Atlanta University. So in our recruitment plan, there are parts of it that relate to increasing diversity in terms of having more Hispanic students here, more Asian students, but we also make sure that we also maintain our historical nature in terms of being an HBCU. Another piece is our international audience. We want to have more international students here at Clark Atlanta University. The bottom line is that we are, in fact, a global society, and we want our students to be able to not only know about the international aspects of what is going on in the world, but we want them to be able to compete. So study abroad is a very big piece of Clark Atlanta University now. The other thing is that we are in just about every state of the United States, and we want to make sure that we have a cross-section of those people in each state to come to Clark Atlanta University. This is a national and international university, and we're working very hard to reflect that. What should be the ultimate size of Clark Atlanta University? In terms of the infrastructure that we have, in terms of the facility, we could easily grow to 5,000 students. So the plan will put us around 4,400 at the end of the plan. And so then in the next plan, we will grow to that 5,000.
Now, what safeguards are in place to make certain that student centeredness remains the focus of the enrollment management plan?
One of the things that we have going for us here at Clark Atlanta University is that we have an absolutely great president, and he's assembled a great staff. And Dr. Brown is a person who puts a lot of his effort and time in making sure that everybody in the environment is comfortable. But it doesn't take a long time to be around him to understand that he realizes that students are first. And so what he's doing is hiring in a pattern where folk who are coming to significant positions also have that same outlook. But then you still have to make sure that everybody up and down the chain of command have that same philosophy. So what we're doing is really building into the evaluation process performance as it relates to customer service, performance as it relates to putting students first. So as a vice president for academic affairs here at the university and provost in my other role, then those individuals who report to me as I am evaluating them for the year, on the front end, they have to develop performance goals, performance objectives, and part of that is customer service, student centeredness, what have you. So on the back end, I evaluate them on that. They have to give me concrete examples of what they've done to support this core value. And it's not by mistake that this particular core value is the first one that we have in the litany of our core values.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Silver. Now, the core values of the strategic plan are student-centeredness, pursuit of excellence, innovation and discovery, integrity, social responsibility, and respect. Ms. Dejanique Garrison, do you have a question for Dr. Silver?
Yes, I do. You mentioned the school is trying to increase diversity amongst Asians, Hispanics, things of that nature. Serving as Ms. Clark at Lansing University, I am often asked the question, are HBCUs still relevant? So with us looking to increase that diversity among different races, how do you answer that question of the relevance of historically black universities such as our own?
Well, first of all, I think that the historically black college will always have a place in American society. When you look at the historical origins of many of our institutions, they were grown out of a segregated society. We have never discriminated against any students. As a matter of fact, the HBCUs are probably the only institution that has always had its doors open to everyone. So the issue becomes a matter of choice. The issues that really created our universities are still very much in existence in this world and in this country. So there's always going to be the choice. And what we're simply saying is that if we're going to remain viable, then we need to make sure that we have a concerted effort to be more and more included, okay, of other, inclusions of others, inclusive of others. So what we're simply saying here is that even though our basic legacy has always done that, you got to look at also the individuals, the pool of students who we are trying to attract. We're trying to make sure that when they go out into the world, that they can intermingle with everyone and have a pretty good sense of self as well as sense of others. I don't think that the relevancy of the HBCUs is ever going to go away. But what we have to do is to make sure that as we compete with other institutions, that we are absolutely second to none, that we give our students the best experience, that when they leave here, they can compete with any and everybody. And that has been the legacy of this great institution.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you so much, Ms. Garrison, for your question. Ms. Michelle, would you like to provide a question with Dr. Silver?
I would. I'm glad Dejanique brought up the point about diversity. You mentioned that you'd like to increase the diversity of our institution. Do you think that by increasing diversity, it would take away from the overall experience of an HBCU? Do you feel as if the school became more, excuse me, let me think about how I want to phrase this. Do you feel if we increase diversity, do you feel like it will take a little bit away from the overall experience of attending an HBCU?
No, our strategic plan is to grow the institution. To grow the institution in the long term, say 10 years to 5,000. We're at 3,800 right now. In the 3 years that this plan is in existence, we're going to get up to around 4,400, okay? So you're going to always have a larger majority of students who look like you, okay? But what we're simply saying is that given that we receive federal funds, even if we wanted to be exclusive, which we don't, we couldn't do that. The fact that each of you probably is receiving some sort of financial aid that's governed by the Department of Education. And so as a prerequisite of receiving that aid for the university, you have to make sure every year that you are putting out a disclaimer that you don't discriminate against anyone. And so from the early 1800s, when the forerunners of this great institution were established, their doors was open then. What you probably don't know that in the early days of this institution, you had a great deal of other race leaders as presidents, vice presidents, and in the administrative ranks. So CAU, Clark Atlanta University, has always been very, very open. We don't see it changing in terms of the value of the experience here. What we see is that we will be enhancing the experiences of everyone who choose to come. This plan is not trying to change anything. The only thing what we're trying to do in this plan is maintain the stability of this great institution, the financial stability of this institution. So it means that we need to be at 5,000 students to do everything that most people at this institution want to see happen in terms of faculty raises, in terms of additional student activities, in terms of more facilities for graduate students. It takes about 5,000 students on a campus like this to do all of those things. So we're not at 5,000, we're at 3,800. So the question becomes, what can we do from a financial standpoint with 3,800 students? So the goal is not to change the scope and the mission of the institution. The goal is to grow the institution and be intentional about inclusion.
Okay. Thanks, Michelle. Interesting question. Well, Richard, what do you think?
My question is, with the strategic plan, have there been other HBCUs, public or private, that have had similar plans, and how, if so, how have they worked for them?
Well, one of the things, I think I'm a student of strategic planning. That's one of the things that I do, as the young people say. And I follow this quite often in terms of how higher education, whether you're historically black or Hispanic serving organization or predominantly white institution, if you're a member of SACS, for an example, the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, they don't